What is the single most expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally fraught project you will ever undertake in your life? It's not your career, or your house, or raising your kids. It's a story about what happens to you when it all ends. A story we tell ourselves about what happens when we die, after everything ends. We spend our lives assembling this story from scraps of science, whispers of philosophy, and the bedrock of our deepest fears and hopes. And today, I want to pull that story apart with you. Not to scare you, but to understand it. Because the story we tell about death is the hidden blueprint for how we choose to live. Before we begin, this video is an educational and analytical discussion about belief systems, their historical roots, and their modern implications. It reflects analysis and opinion based on publicly available information from a variety of cultural, philosophical, and sociological sources. I am not here to critique anyone's personal faith, but to examine how these profound ideas shape the world we all live in. To start, we have to ground ourselves in the only thing we can say for certain happens: the biological process. And let's be honest, our cultural script for this is a mess. We have this sanitized, peaceful image of passing away, but the body's actual journey is a chaotic, vibrant, and frankly, deeply democratic dismantling. It is the ultimate return of your individual components to the collective system. The moment your heart stops and brain activity ceases, what we medically call death, you are, to the world, gone. But for the trillions of microorganisms that called you home and the local ecosystem, the party is just getting started. It begins almost immediately. Your muscles relax entirely. Your body temperature starts to equalize with the room in a process called algor mortis, the death chill. Your blood, no longer pumped, begins to pool in the lowest parts of your body, creating dark bruise-like patches called livor mortis. Within a few hours, a biochemical lock sets into your muscles, rigor mortis, before eventually releasing days later. Then, the real transformation kicks in. The bacteria in your gut, now unchecked by an immune system, begin to digest the very tissues that house them. This anaerobic digestion produces gases: methane, hydrogen sulfide, cadaverine. Your torso and limbs bloat dramatically. This is the bloat stage. Internal pressure forces fluids up and out. It's undignified, it's visceral, and it is the universal, non-negotiable first act of deconstruction. What happens next is a breathtakingly efficient ecological succession. The smell of decay, which to us is horrifying, is a dinner bell to the wider world. Blowflies are often the first responders, laying eggs in orifices and wounds. Those eggs become maggots, which form a living, writhing mass that liquefies soft tissue. Their activity generates heat, actually warming the corpse. Then come the beetles, predators that feed on the maggots, and parasitoid wasps that lay eggs inside them. It's a layered, complex food web that blossoms from your remains. In a hot, arid environment like a desert, a body might mummify, preserved for hundreds of years. In a humid summer, skeletonization can occur in a matter of weeks. Buried in a coffin, the process can drag on for years. Left in the open, you become a liquefied mess within about a month, feasted upon by insects, maggots, and animals. After 50 years, even your bones begin to merge with the earth. This is the base layer of our map, cold, physical, and indifferent. You are broken down into your constituent parts and redistributed. Full stop. For many, this is where the story must end. But for the human mind, this purely material answer feels insufficient. It creates a cognitive vacuum, and nature, especially the human mind, abhors a vacuum. So philosophers invented a second story, a more comforting one. This is the story of the ghost in the machine. The idea that the you, your thoughts, memories, consciousness, is not the machine at all. It's a separate, ephemeral passenger. This is mind-body dualism, and its most famous architect is the 17th century philosopher René Descartes. Descartes' reasoning was elegant in its simplicity. He argued that he could clearly and distinctly perceive his mind as a thinking thing, and his body as an extended thing in space. Since their core natures were completely different, he concluded they must be fundamentally distinct substances. The body is a material, mechanical thing. The mind, or soul, is immaterial and thinking. One can, in theory, exist without the other. Now, let's pause and analyze the incentives here. Why would Descartes, a brilliant mathematician and scientist, push so hard for this idea? The search results point to two powerful motives. First, the religious incentive. In his own letter to the Sorbonne, Descartes said he wanted to provide a rational, almost mathematical foundation for the soul's immortality to counter irreligious thinkers. If the soul is a different substance, then the decay of the body doesn't logically mean the destruction of the self. It provides a philosophical doorway to an afterlife. Second, and this is fascinating, was a scientific incentive. Descartes was trying to clear the decks for a new, mechanistic physics. The old scholastic science explained why a stone falls by saying it desires to reach the center of the earth. Descartes found this absurd. It ascribed mental properties to non-thinking matter. By sharply dividing mind from body, he could strip all purpose, desire, and consciousness out of the physical world. The body becomes a clockwork automaton. The mind is the sole source of consciousness. This was meant to make science cleaner. But here's the colossal problem this creates, the one that keeps philosophers up at night. The interaction problem. If mind and body are made of completely different stuff, how do they interact? How does a non-physical, non-spatial thought like, I want to raise my hand, cause a physical, spatial event like your hand moving? Descartes' own answer was vague, suggesting the pineal gland in the brain might be the point of contact. It was deeply unsatisfying. Yet despite this logical headache, dualism is incredibly sticky. It aligns perfectly with our subjective experience. We feel like pilots in a body, not the body itself. It offers hope, and it creates a clean division of labor. Science gets the decaying body. Faith gets the eternal soul. It's a negotiated settlement for the human psyche. But is it the only settlement? For a different kind of mind, the problem isn't the body's decay, but the finality of linear time. The idea that this one brief life is your only shot feels arbitrary. So another family of stories emerges. Stories not of escape, but of return, the loop. The most developed version of this is the Buddhist concept of samsara, often visualized as the wheel of life. Samsara is the beginningless, endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, characterized fundamentally by suffering, dukkha. You are reborn across 6 realms of existence, from the blissful God realms to the human realm, down to the tormented hell realms, based on the ethical quality of your actions, your karma. But here's the critical, non-negotiable twist in Buddhist philosophy. There is no permanent self being reborn. The Hindu or Jain concept of reincarnation often involves an eternal soul, Atman, moving from body to body. Buddhism explicitly rejects this, anatta, or no self. So what gets reborn? It's more like a process of causal continuity. Think of it as lighting one candle from another. The flame is not the same substance, but it is causally linked. Your bundle of desires, attachments, and karmic imprints propels a new aggregation of mind and body into existence. The incentive structure here is profound. Samsara is not a promise of eternal life. It's a diagnosis of a disease. The goal is not to get a better rebirth, but to get off the wheel entirely, to achieve nirvana, the extinguishing of the craving and ignorance that fuel the cycle. This framework turns life into a rigorous training ground. Every moment is weighted with karmic consequence, not for some final judgment, but for your own forward momentum toward liberation. Now, let's jump continents and centuries to a far more terrifying and personal version of the loop. Friedrich Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. Nietzsche framed it as a thought experiment delivered by a demon in your loneliest moment. He said, "This life as you now live it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more, and there will be nothing new in it. Every joy, every pain, every mundane moment repeated exactly forever." Scholars debate whether Nietzsche meant this as a cosmological fact or just a psychological test, but the power is in the test. Your reaction to this idea is, as scholar Daniel Kane puts it, a litmus test of an individual's capacity to affirm life. Would you be crushed by the horror of infinite repetition? Or, in a tremendous moment, could you say, "You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine"? Nietzsche's loop removes all external incentives. There's no heaven, no karma-based better future, no salvation. The only question is, can you look at your life, this exact life, and love it so completely that you'd willingly sign up for it again, forever? It's the ultimate embrace of amor fati, love of one's fate. The incentive is internal, aesthetic, and brutally demanding. It asks you to be the author of a life so compelling you'd want to reread it eternally. So we now have our map, the undeniable biological decay, and layered on top, we have these competing narratives, the soul's escape, the karmic wheel, the eternal rerun. But I think if we stop at just describing them, we miss the point. We need to ask the functional question, what is the human psychological project behind building these stories? I don't think it's primarily about describing an objective reality. I think it's a multi-tool for solving living problems. First, they are a framework for morality and social order. This is the most obvious function. The promise of heaven and the threat of hell create a cosmic enforcement mechanism for good behavior. The law of karma does the same, but as an impersonal cause and effect principle. Even Nietzsche's eternal recurrence, which rejects external morality, imposes a kind of hyper-personal ethics. Live in such a way that you'd want to live this way forever. These stories answer the existential social question. Why be good? Especially when no one is watching. Second, they are an antidote to terror. The raw biological truth of decomposition is existentially terrifying. It represents the utter annihilation of the conscious self. Dualism is the most direct counterattack. It simply asserts, that thing decaying isn't the real you get to leave. It's the ultimate consolation. Third, and this is more subtle, they are a defense against meaninglessness. If your one and only life ends in obliteration and the universe grinds on indifferently for eons, what's the point of any of it? A linear narrative with an afterlife, heaven, nirvana, gives your struggles a destination. A cyclical narrative, samsara, eternal recurrence, gives your actions infinite weight, either across lifetimes or across eternities. Both fight off the void of cosmic insignificance. Now, let me play a strong counter-argument. A skeptic could say, this is all just elaborate self-delusion, wishful thinking writ large across civilizations. These are copium narratives for a species that's smart enough to foresee its own death, but too scared to face the truth. And you know what? There's a powerful, clean, and courageous logic to that position. To stare at the biological map and say, this is it. I have one brief, beautiful, painful shot, and then I'm gone. That makes this life more precious, not less. This is the essence of secular humanism and much of modern existentialism. But here's my analytical pushback on that pushback. Calling these stories just wishful thinking might be too reductionist. It assumes the only point of a story is to describe factual reality. What if their primary function is not to describe the world, but to shape the human animal living in it? From this perspective, a belief system is a cognitive technology. The belief in an afterlife might reduce death anxiety, allowing people to cooperate and build societies in the face of mortality. The concept of karma might encourage long-term thinking and pro-social behavior. Even if they are metaphysically untrue, they could have been evolutionarily or culturally useful. They are tools for living, not just answers for dying. So where does this leave us? With a stack of maps. The biological map seems the most reliable, built on observable, repeatable evidence. The philosophical and religious maps are more contested, built on faith, reason, and inner experience. My own conclusion isn't about picking the right one. It's about recognizing that we are, by nature, storytelling animals facing a boundary. The biological boundary of death creates a crisis of meaning, and we spin stories to build a bridge across that chasm. Therefore, the most important question may not be which story is true, but what does the story I'm drawn to do to me? How does it shape my life? Does your story fill you with fear of punishment or with gratitude for an opportunity? Does it make you dismiss this world as a vale of tears, or does it make you cherish it as a unique and fleeting gift? Does it encourage passivity, waiting for a better life, or does it light a fire under you to live this one fully? The real work, then, isn't just in choosing a final answer. It's in building a life so engaged, so meaningful, and so connected that, regardless of the final truth, the story of your living moments feels like it was worth telling. If you found this walk through humanity's greatest question thought-provoking, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and hit the bell for more deep dives like this. These are the kinds of conversations I love having on this channel.